Today, on another episode of the Danville Discussion.
Someone around here is bound to know something about the Lost Temple of Juatchadoon.
Juatchadoon?
Exactly. We don't even know if it really exists.
Oh, it exists all right, and I know where to find it.
Go on.
Isabella Garcia Shapiro, femme fatale, ingenue, amateur archaeologist, and licensed tile and grat installer. A girl has to earn a living.
Pleased to meet you. Do you know anything about this?
The amulet of Juatchadoon! The legend says it can awaken an evil Corn Colossus with the power to destroy the world.
Makes you wonder why ancient people were always making stuff like that. I mean, what's the upside?
My mother, New Hampshire Garcia Shapiro, was searching for the temple when she disappeared. I'm afraid something terrible has happened to her. You just gotta help me. I'm also a certified damsel in distress.
Well, we don't normally go searching after other archaeologists/adventurers, but I guess we could make an exception. Now, if we only knew which way she went.
Would this map she sent me help?
Yes, it would. We're gonna need transportation. Rhode Island, Fletcher, I know we're gonna dig up today.
Welcome to the Danville Discussion, a podcast about all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. I'm your host, Caleb Dirksen, and some of you may know me from my YouTube channel of the same name, the one and only place for some web series related to animation such as Caleb Reviews. If this is your first time listening to the Danville Discussion, well, let me just say, welcome aboard. And if you don't know about this, well, this is a podcast where I talk about shows set in the Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh universe, or the Dwampyverse for short. But more specifically, I go through each episode of either Phineas and Ferb or Hamster and Gretel, and I search for all the cultural or in-universe references and fun facts, and anything else I can find in each episode, and then finally, I will end things off by giving each episode a roller coaster rating. So, for today's episode, and in honor of the recent Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the fifth and final movie of the Indiana Jones franchise, I am gonna jump way ahead to Season 3 of Phineas and Ferb and review Episode 86, which is Season 3, Episode 22, which features these segments, Agent Doof and Phineas and Ferb and the Temple of Juatchadoon. If you want to check out more episodes of the Danville Discussion, then log on to anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen, and then it'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion website on Anchor, which is now part of Spotify for podcasters. You can also share your feedback or ask some questions you may have about this episode by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the series and episode title in the subject line. And as I'm recording this, it is already past that date, but it has officially been over 1 year since I started the Danville Discussion. I started this podcast on Saturday, July 23rd, 2022, with the first episode of Phineas and Ferb. And if you want to go back to where it all began, you can start at the beginning on every podcast player, or if you're on YouTube, you can either go to the Danville Discussion podcast playlist, or I'll leave some cards on the upper right corner. Also, before I move into the episode, I just want to take the time to mourn the loss of Paul Reubens, who died at the end of July at the age of 70 to cancer, which is a decent life that he lived. In Phineas and Ferb, he was the voice of Professor Parenthesis in the Alka-File special, but you may know him best as the original actor of Pee Wee Herman. Now, I don't know if I ever remember watching anything with Pee Wee Herman before, but I thought Professor Parenthesis was one of the better parts of the Alka-Files for me. And as for Paul Reubens, you will be missed. But now with that out of the way, when did these segments first premiere? Now, Agent Doof was first aired on Monday, March 26, 2012 on Disney XD Canada, and I'm talking about the one that was a sister network to Family Channel before it was rebranded as Family Charged, and now Wildbrain TV, while Chorus Entertainment launched a new Disney XD network in the area 3 months after Disney Channel, and that air date was before it premiered in the US on Disney Channel on Friday, May 11th, 2012. 2012, and then on Disney XD on Saturday, September 22nd that year, it's the 159th episode in broadcast order. And then you have Phineas and Ferb in the Temple of Juatchadoon, which first premiered on Disney Channel on demand on Friday, January 13th, 2012, and then on Disney XD on Thursday, January 26th, 2012, and then on Disney Channel 4 days later on Monday, January 30th, and was the 144th episode in broadcast order. So, for our first segment that we're going to be looking into, we have Agent Doof. And Agent Doof was a story by Scott Peterson, written and storyboarded by Bernie Pedersen and Michael Diedrich, and directed by Robert F. Hughes. And we're heading to the office in this one, specifically the O.W.C.A. headquarters, not the Dunder Mifflin office with Michael Scott, because we're talking about Phineas and Ferb. But anyways, it starts with Linda going to a baby shower and leaving Candace in charge, in which Candace tells Phineas and Ferb not to do anything while recording it. Meanwhile, Perry heads to his lair and is surprised to see Dr. Doofenshmirtz on the screen. Major Monogram explains that he has turned to the good side, and since he was raised by ocelots, it makes him an animal, but tells Perry he needs to supervise him. Doofenshmirtz explains that he quit evil after trying to use his Babe-inator to turn his brother and the populace into babies, and fails, and so Perry gives him his own cubicle. Norm plugs the Babe-inator while cleaning up the lair. The inator activates and hits Phineas and Ferb, turning them into babies. Thinking that Phineas and Ferb caused this to happen, Candace tries to take a photo of the two and sends it to Linda. However, she simply mistakes it for a baby photo of them. So then Candace attempts to take a photo of them with a newspaper, but Phineas throws her phone in a fountain and Ferb tears apart the newspaper. She decides to use a stroller and take them to show her. Meanwhile, Doof is in his cubicle checking the computer and finds out that Newton the New is Agent Silent G, and he blogs about it. He then goes on a coffee break with the other agents. Back to Candace, she goes through the park and Phineas and Ferb start crying like any other baby would, and they go to a store where Candace leaves them outside to get toys for them to quench their sadness while a robber arrives on his motorcycle. The babies then use the motorcycle and hook it up to the stroller to escape, while Candace chases them and catches them while the robber gets caught.
I got some baby stuff! Oh my gosh! Get back here!
Suckers! Oh, my bike. Oh, good, the cops are here. I can report this vandalism.
Put your hands up!
Oh, that's right.
Doofenshmirtz and Perry are called to Monogram's office to hear that someone revealed Newton the New's secret identity, causing him to be caught by his nemesis, Dr. Diminutive, and Monogram orders Doof and Perry to head out to save him. They take the hoverjet and Doof presses a button that fires a missile, accidentally destroying Monogram's car. Doof and Perry make it to the apartment where the agent is being held. Doof attempts to kick down the door, but gets his foot stuck. Dr. Diminutive catches them with his Photon 2000 particle bubblerator and tells them that he learned Newton the New's identity when Doof put it in his blog. Meanwhile, Candace chases the babies in a toy store and finally catches them. Dr. Diminutive hangs them off the edge of the apartment and drops them 40 stories down, but Perry uses his grappling hook to catch the particle bubblerator and use that to trap Dr. Diminutive in a bubble. Perry then uses it to create a bigger bubble, which they ride and crash into Monogram's office. Candace arrives at the baby shower, but the boys are taken by the Fireside Girls who are helping out at the event. Back at the O.W.C.A. headquarters, Monogram's office is being repaired, and Monogram has to stay in a cubicle. Monogram congratulates Perry for rescuing Agent Silent G, and then fires Doofenshmirtz for many complaints in human resources. Doofenshmirtz realizes he did so much damage for being good and decides to return to evil, so he calls Norm to polish off his inators and leaves. Norm starts off with the Babe-inator, and it hits Linda and the Fireside Girls, turning them into babies, just as Candace says to Linda that the Phineas and Ferb babies are in fact Phineas and Ferb. And that is the end of Agent Doof.
I'll start with this one. Mom, these aren't babies that look like Phineas and Ferb. This is Phineas and Ferb. Okay, I get it. Lesson learned. Toddlers aren't easy. The irony is not lost on me. Little help here. This had better wear off before the next episode.
Going through the cultural references, there are 4 in this episode that I found. Dr. Doofenshmirtz is looking up Newton the New, and I can tell by the gray window square buttons and the red, yellow, and green window buttons that he's using what looks like a parody of the Mac operating system with Safari. I know Disney loves to sneak in some Apple references, even in Pixar films. Doof then talks to the other animal agents about how the duck said, "Got any grapes?"
So then the duck says, "Got any grapes?" Uh-oh, looks like a coffee break is over.
And that is a reference to the popular internet song, The Duck Song by Brian Oden, which is about a duck going to a lemonade stand to ask for grapes. I remember this song, and the Microsoft Paint-esque animation for it became so popular in 2009, and it really has nostalgic vibes written all over it from my personal opinion.
Ba-dum-ba-dum. A duck walked up to a lemonade stand, and he said to the man, "Run in the stand, hey, bump, 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 got any grapes?"
I bet Dan, Swampy, and the writers of this episode loved the song and video so much that they decided to include this reference as a joke in here. And Major Monogram tells Carl that washing his car will teach him karate, a reference to the wax-on, wax-off technique that Mr. Miyagi teaches to Daniel in the 1984 film The Karate Kid, which is a good martial arts movie, by the way, one of the best of that genre next to the Kung Fu Panda films. Lastly, Danny the Dinosaur is a parody of Danny the Dragon mascot of the Happy Hollow Park and Zoo in San Jose, California, which I've never been to before. And for some more handy tools out of my big toolbox of Agent Doof supplies, this is the 3rd longest that an episode segment and its sister segment have aired separately. It was initially paired with Minor Monogram when it premiered on Disney Channel. There is no evil jingle in this episode or the other paired segment that I'll get to later. This episode reveals that Dr. Diminutive's nemesis is Newton the New, and that Dr. Diminutive builds Erators, which is kind of a ripoff of Doofenshmirtz's Innators, and that Major Monogram's car is a black sedan. Holly is the only Fireside Girl who doesn't appear in this episode, since we see the rest of them. As with Phineas, Dr. Doofenshmirtz also scratches his ear when lying, being the 3rd character who does something like that when covering up a lie, following Phineas in The Beak and Carl in Delivery of Destiny. During the end of the episode, when all the agents are fixing the agency, there are 2 pig agents. One is wearing a fedora, and another is wearing a hard hat. And this is likely due to the O.W.C.A. having more than one agent of the same species, like with the ostriches. Candace is eating Health Square cereal at the start of the episode, the same kind of cereal that Jeremy eats on his day to visit colleges as seen in the Across the Second Dimension movie. And Doof leaves his Babe-inator unplugged, which is the exact opposite of what he does to his Shrinkinator in Does This Duckbill Make Me Look Fat? And Let's Take a Quiz. And in terms of milestones, Doof mentions that he was raised by ocelots for the 4th time after the Chronicles of Meep, the Across the Second Dimension movie, and Skiddly Whiffers. This is the 20th episode where Perry doesn't fight Doof after Get That Bigfoot Out of My Face, Put That Putter Away, The Monster of Phineas and Ferbenstein, Oil on Candace, Unfair Science Fair Redux, Another Story, Tip of the Day, Thaddeus and Thor, Oh There You Are Perry, Undercover Carl, I Was a Middle-Aged Robot, Nerds of a Feather, Split Personality, Run Candace Run, Candace Disconnected, Skiddly Whiffers, Bullseye, The Dunkleberry Imperative, and Meepless in Seattle. The first time Isabella and the Fireside Girls are seen as babies. The 4th time the O.W.C.A. headquarters are seen following Traffic Cam Caper, Across the Second Dimension, and Delivery of Destiny. And also the 2nd time Ferb cries after Across the Second Dimension because he's a baby in this episode. This is also the 5th time Candace loses her cell phone following Grease Lightning, Candace Disconnected, Meatloaf Surprise, and Meatless in Seattle, and what's with Candace losing her phone more often in Season 3? As well as the 2nd appearance of Agent M, the monkey, after the first musical Cliptastic countdown, the 4th time Phineas is seen as a baby after Phineas and Ferb get busted, Oh There You Are Perry, and Summer Belongs to You, the 3rd time someone goes to a baby shower, and 2nd time Linda goes after Attack of the 50-Foot Sister and Tour de Ferb, the 2nd time Doofenshmirtz turns to the good side following Voyage to the Bottom of Buford, the 4th time Isabella only has one line of spoken dialogue after Flop Stars, It's a Mud 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 World, and Tour de Ferb, the 3rd time Phineas and Ferb are hit with one of Doofenshmirtz's innators following Gaming the System, Canderemy, and Phineas and Ferb Interrupted, the 2nd time someone gets told washing something will teach them karate after Doof Dynasty, the 2nd time someone gets their foot stuck in a door following Shea Platypus, the 5th time Doofenshmirtz and Monogram interact after Cliptastic Countdown 1, Summer Belongs to You, Candace Gets Busted, and Perry the Actorpuss, the 2nd time Linda is seen as a baby after Mom's birthday, the 4th appearance of many of the O.W.C.A agents following Cheer Up Candace, Phineas and Ferb's Christmas Vacation, and Across the Second Dimension, and the 4th episode to have the word Doof in the title following Hail Doofania, The Doof Side of the Moon, and Doof Dynasty. So now let's get on to what I liked and didn't like about this episode. The first thing I kinda liked was the beginning with the interaction of Candace and Linda.
Candace, honey, I'm going out to a birthday party.
For who?
You know Vivian's aunt's sister's landlord's son?
Evan?
His son.
Dexter?
Yeah, it's his birthday.
Why do they even have parties for 2-year-olds? It's not like they're gonna remember anything.
Baby parties aren't for the babies, Candace. They're for the moms.
The moms?
So they can feel rewarded for all the hard work they do.
Toddlers are easy. They eat, they poop, they sleep, end of story.
You're a laugh riot, Candace. Think you can handle watching Phineas and Ferb today?
Piece of cake.
Have fun.
Time to be in charge.
And we then go outside and Candace is declaring herself to be in charge, and as Candace is listing down everything she doesn't want Phineas and Ferb to do, Ferb is recording everything on a tape recorder, and among those things she's listing down is no asking where Perry is, which cuts to Perry becoming Agent P. That's honestly a great visual gag and subplot transition for me, one of my highlights of this episode. Not to mention that Perry's lair entrance was cool, like usual. This time it's Perry using a plank on the fence as a diving board and jumping into the pool next door, which floods him into his lair.
Okay, you two. I'm in charge, and I'm gonna lay down some rules.
Okay, shoot.
No leaving the yard, no amusement park rides, no robots, no rocket ships. No
Ferb,
time
are you
shares,
getting all
no
this?
remote control llamas,
Cool.
no first edition issuing of commemorative coins, no asking where Perry is, no astrological planetary alignments.
About the plot of Candace trying to take care of her babyfied brothers, it is decent, but not anything too special. Like, I think the Agent Doof plot is the better part of this episode, but even this side of the story has some good moments, and I do like that Candace tries to be a good caretaker for baby Phineas and Ferb. Like, this is another instance where I really feel bad for her. I also really like the fact that the boys can still get creative even as babies, since they get out their tools when the burglar leaves his bicycle behind, which is another gag I like as a highlight, the burglar being caught by the police after the babies ride off on their newly tweaked motor stroller. I thought the song Here's Why It Is Great to Be a Baby was decent, showing all the benefits of being a baby and whatnot, in the style of a southern jazz musical number by Danny Jacob.
Crawl around on the ground, I'm allowed to make obnoxious sounds. I can be asleep both night or day. I ain't got much hair to brush, and there ain't no need for me to flush, and that is why you'll always hear me say...
And then at the end of the episode, at the tail end, I burst out laughing when Candace broke the fourth wall after Linda, Isabel, and the Fireside Girls were hit by the Babe-inator. Candace is just there holding baby Phineas and Ferb, annoyed, and she looks at the camera and says, "This had better wear off by the next episode." And then it immediately transitions into the next segment, which I'll talk about in a bit. Regarding the Perry and Doofenshmirtz plot, I'd say this is a much better portrayal of Doof as an agent or a good guy than in the Alka Files, right next to his Milo Murphy's Law appearances, since he isn't so annoying here, like he doesn't talk too much, and his jokes are funnier in here than in Alka Files. His first interaction with Agent P at the office about how he gave up being evil was fascinating and funny, and then he just insults Agent Kitty by saying how he wants to hang up a cat poster that says "hang in there."
You see, I just built an inator. I called it the Babe-inator. Now, it's not what you think. Its purpose was to transform my brother the mayor and all of his cronies into a bunch of crying babies. That way I can take City Hall like the babies taking candy away from whatever they take candy. You know what I mean. Anyway, the Babe-inator was ready to go, so I took aim at my brother's office and pressed the button. But it didn't work. It didn't work for like the 100th time. My evil plan did not work. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm just not good at being evil. That's when I had my epiphany. From now on, I'm going to be a good guy. So here I am. Wow, my own cubicle. How nice. I'm going to put a poster right here, a kitten that says "hang in there." No offense. It's not that I think that's all you guys do or anything. Oh, great. Now he's going to Human Resources.
Of course, one of my highlights was the duck song reference that Doof made during his coffee break to insult the duck. The call-out of Doof and call-in of Carl by Monogram was funny, how he said in the same tone,
"A ride-along? Sweet! I can wear my new fedora."
Get out of here. Carl, get in here.
I also kinda chuckled a bit when Doof got his foot trapped in Dr. Diminutive's door as he tried to kick it down, and then saying "awkward," and even his remark about Dr. Diminutive's Photon 2000 particle bubblerator, saying 2000 was so 4,000 days ago.
"I trapped you in a particle bubble for my new Photon 2000 particle bubblerator."
Oh, brother. 2000 was so 4,000 days ago.
In fact, funnily enough, I did the math to calculate the total added number of days from January 2000 to calculate to 4,000, and I added 366 days too from the leap years of 2000, 2004, and 2008, and it brought me to 2010 with 4,018 days since the start of 2000. Then I subtracted 18 from January 2010, and my final stopping date was December 14th, 2009. But also, you could start from any day after January 2000, and it would take you to 2010, which is probably around the time the episode was written. There's also the running gag of Norm and the Babe-inator. Norm is doing some work with the machine, and then suddenly he activates it, turning whoever it strikes into babies, and I love the visual gag of the spotlight shining on Dr. Doof when he realizes he is good at being evil after all.
Let's face it, you've done more harm inside the agency than you ever did outside.
So what you're saying is that I'm good at being evil after all. Norm, we're back in business. Dust off the inators. Later, chumps.
As for the animation, I haven't gotten through the big gap between the last episode I did from Season 1 or this episode, but I definitely noticed the improvements seen here, and this whole episode was done by Wang Animation Studios, or Wang Film, and a newly joined studio called Suzhou Hongying Animation Company. I know that sounds like a racist stereotypical name for a Chinese animation outlet, but that's their official name regardless. But of course it comes with smooth movements, and now there are slightly thinner outlines on the characters, some good special effects, more detail in shading and lighting, more gradient colors and detailed patterns and textures, a great use of squash and stretch, most notably for the bouncing bubble, a good use of background blurring when Doof, Perry, and Newton the New are trapped in a crate on the skyscraper, and great action scenes in the Perry and Doof subplot plot, and even Dr. Diminutive's design reminds me of Dr. Cortex from the Crash Bandicoot games. If I could criticize some parts of it though, there are some choppy moments like when Monogram looks at Doof as the latter purrs. There are times when some character outlines can disappear, such as when baby Phineas and Ferb get out their tools. Doof's head moves weirdly when he says, "awkward," and the skin on Ginger's legs changes color after she is hit with the Babe-inator, which is one of the technical errors I spotted, and it felt kinda off. Speaking of errors, there are others I was able to spot, like when Major Monogram hands the complaint list to Doofenshmirtz, the latter's arm is not attached to his body. And that's probably because this was aired at a time when Disney was still safeguarding their TV programs for display on 4x3 televisions, in addition to having them matted in widescreen for HD TVs. Plus, Ginger, Gretchen, and Millie are wearing their sashes on their right shoulders instead of their left shoulders, and when the Babe-inator hits all of the Fireside Girls, Katie's sash is also on her right shoulder, and her party hat turns orange with a red stripe. During one part of the song, Here's Why It Is Great to Be a Baby, Phineas, Ferb, and Candace are in their own house despite being in the store before for most of and after the song, and they also seem to appear in the Garcia Shapiro kitchen in one shot. When Carl is washing Monogram's car, a handicapped space marker is on the ground in the space above the car. When Doofenshmirtz blows up the car, however, the handicapped space marker is gone. And in the credits, which I'll get to when I finish the next segment, Millicent Henson's first name is misspelled as Millet, and Mitch Roshan is listed twice. But this was overall a decently solid episode. I like the Doofenshmirtz plot better over the Phineas and Ferb plot here, but this episode was still pretty good. Now our next segment is the biggest subject of this episode, and it is Phineas and Ferb and the Temple of Juatchadoon. And Phineas and Ferb and the Temple of Juatchadoon was a story by Jim Bernstein, written and storyboarded by Bernie Pedersen and Michael Diedrich, and directed by Jay Lender. The episode, which is an obvious spoof of the Indiana Jones films, is set during the summer of 1914, in which the adventurous archaeologist duo of Ohio Flynn and Rhode Island Fletcher, who are look-alike ancestors of Phineas Flynn and Ferb Fletcher, embark on their latest quest, which is to retrieve the lost amulet of Juatchadoon from a cave in India. They complete the task with little effort, but as they make their escape, they are halted by Doofenshmirtz and his robotic henchman, Norm. When an encounter with the abominable snowman interrupts the confrontation with their nemesis, Ohio and Rhode Island manage to flee in their biplane. Meanwhile, Doof and Norm do not catch them and get chased by the abominable snowman instead. They land in Panama, where they rest in a trading post to discuss their plans of finding the Lost Temple of Juatchadoon. There, they meet Isabella, whose mother, New Hampshire Garcia Shapiro, who is the 1914 counterpart of Vivian Garcia Shapiro, had supposedly set off to find the temple but subsequently went missing. She seeks their cooperation to find her, and Ohio agrees. At the same time, they attract the attention and interest of a journalist, Candace, who has been trying to document the duo for a story in the newspaper, and she tags along with them, as Perry puts on a fedora and meets with Monogram and Carl. After being told by the superior to replace his fedora with a fez, he receives his mission, which is to stop Doofenshmirtz from reaching the Temple of Juatchadoon.
As I was saying, Doofenshmirtz is dangerously close to laying his mitts on the lost idol of Juatchadoon. If he were to get hold of it, it would be blood-sucking, chupacabra, brain-eating zombie, ancient Mayan gods come to life weird, voodoo curses with goat heads and whatnot bad. Now, get out there and stop him, Agent B.
Why are we wearing a fez in the middle of Central America anyway?
You mean we're not in Egypt? I thought those pyramids were kind of stair-steppy.
Meanwhile, the group reached the vicinity of the Temple of Juatchadoon with the help of Skipper Baljeet and his first mate Buford, and the four disembark from the boat, and after a short hike on foot, they reach the temple. After navigating around the temple's booby-trap-riddled interior, they reach its central chamber. However, they are captured by Doofenshmirtz, who lets Isabella out of the cage, and she reveals herself to have been working for him, much to Ohio's disdain, which makes her come off as a dirty double-crosser. And so she hands the amulet of Juatchadoon over to Doof, who then betrays her and pushes her into a trench at the bottom of the floor in which her mother is already trapped. With the amulet, Doof awakens the Corn Colossus of the temple. Just then, Perry enters and frees Ohio, Rhode Island, Candace, Isabella, and New Hampshire before turning his attention towards foiling Doofenshmirtz, complete with a group of background female singers with the song Perry in a Fez, which is just a shortened version of the Perry the Platypus theme, but they added references to the fact that Perry is wearing a fez.
He's a semi-aquatic, egg-laying mammal of action. He's got more than just mad skill. He's got a beaver tail and a bill. He's Perry the Platypus. But you can call him Agent P.
Doof scoffs at Perry's efforts at stopping him and sends the Corn Colossus his way. However, Ohio turns the Colossus's attention towards his group by breaking a corn cob in half. He then makes a run for it with the rest of his group as it follows in pursuit. Perry and Doofenshmirtz are left alone in the temple's central chamber, and they briefly tangle over the amulet before Perry uses his gadget-rigged fez to snatch it from the rogue archaeologist. Ohio's group finds themselves cornered on the top of the pyramid with the Corn Colossus closing in on them. As all hope for their escape is lost, the fez delivers the amulet to the group, and then Ohio smashes it with a rock. The Corn Colossus pops into popcorn, and a massive crevice opens up through Panama, with the Temple of Juatchadoon itself in the center. The temple is shattered by the force and the group falls in. They are later rescued by O.W.C.A and Buford with their boat. As they head back for civilization, Isabella apologizes to Ohio for double-crossing them, and Candace discovers that the photos she had taken of the journey with her camera, along with the camera itself, are destroyed. And that's it for Phineas and Ferb and the Temple of Juatchadoon.
Well, we found the amulet, defeated the corn monster, apparently created a much-needed canal across Panama, and saved the world.
And I've got the proof. Sorry about the betrayal, guys.
That's okay, Isabella. We understand. By the way, does anyone else find it weird that we were saved by an anthropomorphic platypus?
The world holds many mysteries, but what seems strange to one may be commonplace to another. The fez was weird, though. I mean, we're not in Egypt.
For the cultural references, let's start with the obvious references to Indiana Jones. Of course, the title is a big reference to the second movie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Phineas is called Ohio Flynn, Ferb is called Rhode Island Fletcher, and Vivian is called New Hampshire Garcia Shapiro, which are references to the fact that Indiana Jones was named after the state of Indiana, and his real name is Henry Jones Jr., as the son of Henry Jones Sr. from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And speaking of the latter, Isabella betraying Phineas and Ferb is a reference to how Elsa betrayed Indiana Jones in Last Crusade. Even the clothes Doofenshmirtz wears inside the temple are similar to those of Dr. Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Other references to Raiders are Ohio and Rhode Island being chased by a giant boulder just like Indy was, and as the temple is crumbling, Doofenshmirtz remarks, "Probably my face will melt now, and for what?" which is a reference to the fates of Arnold Tote and Colonel Dietrich at the end of the movie. And finally, the Secret Order of the Knights Without a Cool acronym, aka SOCWACA, along with the members wearing fezes, are also references to the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Plus, regarding the fact that this aired in early 2012, that was months before Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm was completed, because they now own the rights to Star Wars and Indiana Jones. But now the other cultural references include that Baljeet's clothing and tough guy demeanor, along with the boat he operates, are likely a reference to the Humphrey Bogart classic, The African Queen, which I have heard of but haven't seen yet. The Fez dispenser is a parody of the famous Pez candy dispenser. Doof's idea to take the Corn Colossus to New York to perform on Broadway is what the explorers in the original 1933 King Kong and its 2005 remake did with the eponymous giant gorilla. Ohio distracts the Corn Colossus by destroying an ear of corn, pretty much the same way that Agent J attracts the attention of the bug by destroying a roach in the final battle sequence of the 1997 film Men in Black, which is a really good movie and I recommend it. And lastly, Panama separating from Central America is similar to Panama separating from Colombia in 1903. So now here's some more handy tools out of my big toolbox of Temple Expedition supplies, and I'm calling it that because Isabella says that term in the episode.
Well, it's a lucky thing you accidentally hammered yourself into that crate marked Temple Expedition supplies then, isn't it?
Just like in the last segment with Agent Doof, the evil Jingle is not present here. This episode was first revealed on page 10 of the Across the Second Dimension official movie magazine in an interview with Dan and Swampy, and was at the time only known as the untitled 20th Century Indiana Jones style episode. After about a decade of work, the present-day Panama Canal was completed in 1914, the same year as the events of this episode. Of course, Juatchadoon is a spoof of Isabella's line Juatchadoon. Unlike present-day Phineas, Ohio states that he works for profit. None of the characters portrayed by the Flynn Fletchers in this episode seem to be related, which is pretty weird. A monkey that swings by as the scene changes to Panama makes the same sound as the endangered tangerine orangutan in Bad Hair Day. The chupacabra is mentioned in this episode before its debut in La Candace Cabra, so they did some foreshadowing in here, and most of the characters in this episode act like adults regardless of age, as a nod to the serious theme of the Indiana Jones franchise, which is the main basis of the adventure. For milestones, this is the first episode since Nerds of a Feather to premiere on Disney XD first, because all the other episodes between that and this were premiered on Disney Channel first. This is also the second episode to use Who and the Temple of What in the title, following Isabella and the Temple of Sap. The third time Thank You Very Much is said, following Hide and Seek and The Beak. The second time OMG is said after Split Personality. The second episode to use Perry's theme song in a non-instrumental form following One Good Scare Ought to Do It. The third time Ohio is mentioned after Invasion of the Ferb Snatchers and Summer Belongs to You. The fourth episode to not take place in the present day following Tri-Stone Area, Doof Dynasty, and Excalifurb. And finally, the 11th episode to use Phineas and Ferb's names in the title following Phineas and Ferb Get Busted, Phineas and Ferb's Quantum Boogaloo, Phineas and Ferb Musical Cliptastic Countdown, Phineas and Ferb's Christmas Vacation, not Phineas and Ferb, Phineas and Ferb Busters, Phineas and Ferb's Hawaiian Vacation, Phineas and Ferb Summer Belongs to You, Phineas and Ferb Interrupted, and a Phineas and Ferb Family Christmas, the 12th if you count Phineas and Ferb the movie Across the Second Dimension. So what did I think of this episode? What are some things I liked or whatever? Well, I gotta say, this was definitely a fun homage to Indiana Jones with all the references they make, and as for the gags, I love the slow clapping gags with Doofenshmirtz when Ohio and Rhode Island encounter him for the first time.
Doofenshmirtz.
Well, Ohio Flynn and Rhode Island Fletcher. What are you doing here?
That depends. Why are you slow clapping?
I don't know. I thought it would make my entrance more dramatic. And it totally worked.
You know, he's right. It was more dramatic.
Now hand over that amulet.
No way.
And then with Norm, where Doof responds, "Way too soon for a callback, Norm." That's when they crash on a snowball while Ohio and Rhode Island escape.
Way too soon for a callback, Norm.
Another joke that got to me was the abominable snowman joke. Ohio says to Doof that they retrieved the amulet fair and square, and then Doof says, "Tell it to the abominable snowman." Ohio finds it to be a weird expression until an actual abominable snowman appears behind Norm and the boys, which then squishes Norm on the head, and Norm just says, "I'll just run ahead," walking funnily out of the cave.
We retrieved it fair and square.
Tell it to the abominable snowman.
Well, that's a weird expression.
No, I mean, tell him right now. Look!
I'll just run ahead.
Afterwards, Doof says, while running away from the Yeti, that maybe the giant cannibal thing was a mislead and that the dining set was his.
Maybe the giant cannibal thing was a mislead. I think the dining set was his.
Also, the way Doofenshmirtz said, "Oh mama," I just love it so much. He sounded like a seal barking the way he said it. It's like, "Oh mama, I just gotta play the clip right now." I like the dialogue line transitions across the globe that pay extra tribute to Indiana Jones, and then Candace mentions that they haven't invented deodorant soap yet when she talks about her new scoop to Linda. That's something I can chuckle at because I looked it up that soap and deodorant were invented long before this episode took place. Soap was invented in 2800 BC, and deodorant soap was invented in the late 1800s. The deodorant joke may seem historically inaccurate, but I still got a few chuckles.
Daily Tableau.
Chief, who do you think just showed up in Panama?
If you're gonna try and sell me another fairy tale about Ohio, Flynn, and Rhode Island,
There's a scoop here and I can smell it. Or they haven't invented deodorant soap yet, but there's still a scoop.
Fine, but I want to see pictures.
I won't let you down.
Then there's Perry's briefing by Monogram, in which the gags I liked were the Fez dispenser gag and that joke where Carl asks Monogram why they're wearing fezes in Central America instead of Europe. When Ohio asks Baljeet and Buford to come with the group, Baljeet feels reluctant and declines because he might spoil his carefully calculated air of selfishness and unconcern, saying, "Not till the last second, thank you very much." And what made me laugh was Ohio responding, "Wow, authentic riverboat gibberish," probably because of what Baljeet said about his carefully calculated air of selfishness and unconcern. When they all get inside the temple, Ohio tries to find a way to break open the case that's sealing the key to the temple. The clue reads, "If you choose to go further, you'll wish you weren't born. The road to destruction is paved with corn." And the methods he thinks of are a latch, a twisting method, and then Isabella says, "Or we could hit it with a rock," which that gag is one of the biggest highlights of this episode for me, and they do it again when they're stuck at the top trying to escape from the Corn Colossus.
If you choose to go further, you'll wish you weren't born. The road to destruction is paved with corn. Jerry, there must be some trick to opening this case, a latch or some way to twist it or
we could hit it with a rock.
Yeah, that works.
The song Don't Look Down was pretty good too, with that jungle-style vibe similar to Donkey Kong Country and everything. The lyric "Follow Your Nose" sounded very familiar since I normally associate it as the catchphrase of Toucan Sam from the Fruit Loops commercials.
What's this? My nose detects something new that's delicious, so I must follow my nose. Wherever it goes, to the flavors of fruit, wherever they grow. Oh my, I can't believe my eyes! A cherry berry tree!
When Doofenshmirtz traps the group, Isabella is revealed to have been working for him, and right at that, not only does Ohio call her a dirty double-crosser, but Izzy also hands him a business card with her name on it, along with the occupation of dirty double-crosser.
You fiend! You think we're just gonna give it to you?
Yes, I do.
Sorry, boys.
What?
Here you go.
Isabella, you dirty double-crosser!
I forgot to give you this one.
It's right up there in the highlights because she mentions her other occupations earlier in the episode, which are femme fatale, ingenue, amateur archaeologist, and licensed tile and grout installer. After Perry comes in with the background singers, Isabella responds to Ohio's plan to lead the Corn Colossus away from the background singers with "OMG, coolest sentence ever, somebody write that down." Another great highlight gag for me.
We gotta lead the Corn Colossus away from those backup singers.
OMG, coolest sentence ever! Somebody write that down!
Hey, Corny! What do you think of this?
Plus, the Corn Colossus' weakness is broken up corn cobs, as it turns out, but fire sure isn't, because when the Corn Colossus falls into the flames, Isabella says that he's easier to defeat than she thought he'd be, only for him to come back up and follow them out of the temple. Doof makes a nice little corn pun when fighting Perry, where he'd make Perry wish he'd never been corn cause it rhymes with born, and then it was cool seeing Perry's fez turn out to be a drone that takes the amulet from Doof, leaving him to respond, "You're a real spoil sport, you know that?"
Aha! You just wait till I connect with one of these, then you'll wish you'd never been corn. Get it? Because it rhymes with... Hey, what's with the fez anyway? We're not even in Egypt. You're a real spoil sport, you know that?
I even felt pretty bad for Candace at the end of the episode when her camera got ruined after being filled up with water and a fish inside. She really got the whole story on Ohio and Rhode Island finding the temple, but antique cameras are not water resistant. Yet what the boys did, I don't really think it was worth busting for Candace or Linda here. Like I said, all of the characters act like adults, even though some of them are kids. Anyways, the animation once again was done by Wang Animation and Hong Ying Animation, and of course, like the previous segment, it looks real nice. Again, this episode has smooth character animation and a nice use of squash and stretch, including when Doofenshmirtz activates the amulet. I see lots of effort put into the movement of the rats in one of the booby traps. when there's lots of them running really fast. It also has some artistic looking textures and backgrounds, like I can even tell in the palm trees that it's as if they came right out of something like Dora the Explorer. There's vibrant colors throughout, excellent shading and lighting, and great action scenes when they're running around the temple and Perry's fighting Doofenshmirtz. Though I did find a few things to criticize here, that some scenes can get slightly blurry, like on the snow mountain with Doof and Norm. There are some choppy parts, such as Ohio putting his hand down on the table after he says, "I mean, what's the upside?" And when Ohio is about to smash the amulet, his neck overlaps his clothes for a moment, which is actually another instance of front-facing Phineas, everybody. Or in this case, front-facing Ohio Flynn, everybody. When it comes to locating the errors, the map showing the location of Kathmandu depicts modern-day boundaries between countries because in 1914, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Burma were part of British India. When Norm grabs Ohio and Rhode Island, he has his freckles, but when Ohio asks Doofenshmirtz why he is slow clapping, they're gone. When the Perry the Platypus theme plays, Isabella is shown inside the cage with Ohio and Rhode Island while she should be trapped in the ditch with New Hampshire, and I don't get why, because when the scene shifts back to the ditch, she's still trapped in there. Also, there's no door on the cage, just a lock and hinges attached to one of the bars. The lock and hinges are on the same side, and a seam appears on some of the bars when the door is opened, but they vanish again once it's closed. Another technical goof I spotted is that when Candace opens the back of her camera to check the film, her arm goes behind her body, and the Panama Canal is not a sea-level canal as depicted in the episode, but rather a multi-level canal with lots to move ships up and down. When Isabella is running on the spike roller, her eyes are black instead of blue. And finally, in the last shot of the boat going away, Rhode Island is dressed like his present counterpart as Ferb, and New Hampshire's pith helmet is missing. Above all, this was a really fantastic, really great episode, and whether or not you're a fan of Indiana Jones, I highly recommend this one, and I'll definitely be watching it again at some point in time. Now, our last subject is the credit sequences. But since Temple of Juatchadoon aired first before Agent Doof, the only credit sequence this episode has is just a repeat of Perry in a Fez and nothing original. However, since I haven't reviewed the episodes between the last episode I reviewed from Season 1 and this episode yet, I will say that the credits are now in a different, simpler font instead of graphite STD, and Walt Disney Television Animation is now just Disney Television Animation without the word Walt. I should also mention the differences in the opening as well, that when the camera zooms in on Phineas, he begins to smile instead of just having a still frown, which has been going on since Season 2, and the sliding shots at the end of the theme song are all stills of Season 2 episodes. Other than that, I don't need to say anything else. So now with all that said and done, let's go straight into our roller coaster rating. I give Agent Doof 8 O.W.C.A. operated roller coasters out of 10. I decently like the subplot of Candace with baby Phineas and Ferb, but I thought the Doofenshmirtz plot was the bigger highlight of the episode for me, and it is basically the better version of the Alka Files, on top of some really good animation. And then for Phineas and Ferb in the Temple of Juatchadoon, I give it 9.5 roller coasters full of ancient destiny dials out of 10. This is definitely the better segment out of the two, as it pays a big homage to one of the greatest film franchises of all time with Indiana Jones, and the animation is just so colorful, gorgeous, and really well animated. So with that, I give this whole episode 9 roller coasters out of 10, and I highly recommend this episode even to Indiana Jones fans out there. One of the best episodes to come out of Season 3. Now, before I get into the Twitter poll for this week, I just want to bring up some updates regarding Twitter itself. So, at the end of last month, news broke out that Twitter was being rebranded to X following Elon Musk's takeover 9 months ago. And unsurprisingly, a lot of people I know on Twitter were angry at this decision, especially with the iconic bird being dropped for a stylized X. Like, people hate the new name and logo, no one asked for this change, they still want to call it Twitter, and for good reason. They even brought up Food Fight, one of the worst or even the worst animated film ever made because of the Brand X stuff, which is shockingly funny when you do think about it, because whenever I think of Elon Musk now, I think of Lady X, the villain of Food Fight, and when I think of his cohorts, I think of those Nazi-like Brand X soldiers that take over the supermarket, which makes me wonder if Musk also watched Food Fight. But even Jeff Swampy Marsh, whose Twitter handle is @mmonogram, which is short for Major Monogram and all in lowercase, he called X like the former, because back in the late 90s, Elon Musk had a short-lived online bank called X.com before it became PayPal. And this is honestly really stupid. It's possibly the worst rebrand I've ever seen. It's literally worse than HBO Max dropping the HBO name to rebrand itself to just Max after all the disastrous results of the Warner Brothers Discovery merger. Honestly, just thinking about Elon Musk and Twitter right now, it's just... he's been making stupid decisions because Twitter was one of the biggest utopias for people to socialize, maybe except for the animation Twitter community because they can be toxic at times. And now they're having so many complications that they don't know what to do with Elon Musk. And what's even worse is that Elon Musk has been off the rails in the business. What do you want to do? Try to freaking Brand X everything that you own? Are you gonna give Tesla the stupid, boring, unmarketable Food Fight Brand X rebrand that you always keep screwing up? Or are you gonna think about buying the whole Walt Disney Company and drop the Disney name for another Brand X to make Walt Disney himself roll in his grave? Just like how they dropped the Fox name for 20th Century Studios? Just flat out just ruined Disney even more than Bob Chapek did? Actually, no, I fear that moment, and I shouldn't even bring that up because that's just gonna give Musk some ideas, and he'll do whatever stupid thing he does all the time, so I'm not gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. But like, what do you want to do with your companies? You claim yourself to be the richest man alive, but if you keep going like this, you'll never be like Scrooge McDuck. Like, why would anyone be so brain-damagingly dumb to think that it would be a good idea for you to buy Twitter, Elon? Seriously! This is why you have such a freaking bad reputation, man! And what's even worse is that, are you telling me right now that you have so many complications to make your own new brand X service, yet you have freaking no problem rebranding Twitter as X and dropping the Berg? Like, locked and loaded, we're gonna make a new X out of Twitter. Really? Like, can't you do anything else with your life? It would make more sense if you made a streaming service called XBinge or XTube or XTV. You can't do something like that, Elon Musk? For good God. Seriously, this has all been nothing but Elon Musk making bad decisions. I mean, making Twitter verifications only accessible to Twitter Blue subscribers, lying about stepping down from Twitter, and now he rebranded it to such a stupid name with a horrendous looking logo instead of a bird. It makes no sense. Like, these are the things that make me wonder, why are you still even working in the business? I'm still gonna call it Twitter, and I am not gonna update the app. I'm still keeping the bird until my version runs out of support. At that point, I'm gonna jump ship. It's because of the stupid, bad decisions like this why there have been many competitors to Twitter recently, like Instagram Threads, Mastodon, and now Blue Sky Social. Elon Musk is nothing but a series of bad decisions, I swear to God. But anyways, let's get to our new Twitter or X poll for this week. And for this week, I'm asking you guys, which of the following is your favorite hashtag Phineas and Ferb time shift episode? Hashtag Danville discussion poll. And the choices we have are A, Tri-Stone Area, B, Doof Dynasty, C, Excalibur, or D, Temple of Juatchadoon, and I shorten it because of the character limit in each poll. So, while Twitter's eventual doomsday comes afoot to be all X'd, go onto Twitter and search for my other page at Caleb the PNF Guy or hashtag Danville discussion poll, and then you can go ahead and make your voice heard. And hopefully, go to jail, Elon Musk. And with that, that's all that I'm going to be talking about this week, so thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Danville Discussion. As for me, you can find me on my Facebook page at Real Caleb Dirksen, on my Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok pages at Caleb Dirksen2 with the number 2 at the end and all in lowercase, on my alternate Twitter page at Caleb the PNF Guy, on my Instagram pages at Caleb.Dirksen for my main page or at Caleb Flynn Fletcher for my alternate page, on Threads at Caleb.Dirksen, and on my DeviantArt page at CalebDirksen20. I've also opened up a new account on Blue Sky Social. My handle is at CalebDirksen2.bsky.social, all in lowercase, so you can follow me there if you were invited into a new account. And you can also find me on Discord by entering the username Caleb Dirksen, all in one word and all in lowercase. And if you go to the invite link in the description below, it'll also invite you to my Discord server so that you can talk with me about anything, including this podcast or my other content. You can also find me on YouTube. Just search for Caleb Dirksen and look for the icon of me as a soldier. And if you want to support my work and get some great rewards at once, which includes getting access to my content before anyone else, including my videos, my podcast episodes, and all that sort of thing, then you can become a patron at patreon.com/Caleb Dirksen. Your support would be just great. As for this podcast, we are available to listen on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Good Pods, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the link on iHeartRadio is www.iheart.com/podcast/997100607. So go there and it should take you to the official Danville discussion page on iHeartRadio, and then you can subscribe over there. Plus, you can also find us on Spotify for podcasters by using your Apple or Android device, or going on the web at anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen, and it'll take you directly to the Danville discussion page on Anchor, part of Spotify for podcasters. podcasters. Now, if you have listened to this episode on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast service, can you just go and just rate and review the show? That would be just great as long as it's respectful. And if you have listened to this episode as a video on YouTube, then go and press that like button and leave us a little comment with your thoughts on this episode of Phineas and Ferb. You can also share your feedback or ask some questions by sending us an email at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the series and episode title in the subject line. Join us next time, and I'm gonna get into episode 7 of Hamster and Gretel, which includes the opposite of smart and birthday besties. Tune in next time for the newest episode of the Danville discussion with all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. And with that said, thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, this is Caleb, over and out. This podcast was created strictly and only for entertainment and information purposes. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, Disney Television Animation, or their affiliates. All and any names, images, clips, sounds, or other items related to Phineas and Ferb, Milo Murphy's Law, Hamster and Gretel, and other Disney properties are trademarks and or copyrights of their respective holders. All original content from this podcast is the intellectual property of the Danville discussion and the host or hosts running the podcast unless otherwise noted.
Way too soon for a callback, Norm.